The Peloran Drift was, by any reasonable measure, an embarrassment to look at. She'd been commissioned 41 years ago as a mid-range survey tender, decommissioned once, re-registered under the Survey Authority's Heritage Charter, and patched so many times that her hull plating ran 3 different shades of gray, depending on which decade the replacement panel came from. Her drives hummed at a frequency that most modern sensor suites flagged as mechanical distress. Her antenna array was a salvaged composite from 2 different vessel classes that had no business being bolted to the same mast. She topped out, fully loaded, at about 60% of the speed limit for the corridor we were traveling. I loved her completely. My name is Yara Osei. I am a licensed Survey Authority technician, grade 4, with a secondary certification in compliance documentation and relay filing procedure. My job, aboard the Drift, is to make sure every piece of equipment we operate is within calibration tolerances, every form we submit is correctly time-stamped, and every survey we conduct meets the evidentiary standard required under the Concord's Treaty of Assessed Presence, which is a long name for a short idea. If you want to claim sovereign governance over a sector or contested space, someone has to have measure it first. That's what we were doing in the Velsorith Reach. Measuring. We had been out there for 11 days when the garrison hailed us. Commander Soth Velan, his title read, Slate Blue Hierarchate, Sector Enforcement Division, 3rd rank. He opened the channel without preamble. The visual feed showed a tall, smooth-skinned figure with a characteristic indigo undertone of the Hierarchate's officer caste, standing at the center of a well-lit command platform ringed by junior officers at their consoles. He looked at our ship with the particular expression I had come to recognize across 3 postings. The expression of someone who has just spotted something they consider beneath a formal response, but is going to give one anyway. Unregistered vessel, he said. You are operating in a restricted assessment zone. Cut drives and prepare for boarding inspection. Our captain, a compact Terran woman named Deshira Volta, looked at me. I was already pulling up the filing interface. We're registered, Deshira said pleasantly. Peloran Drift, Survey Authority Charter number 471 Echo 9. She'll be in the registry. There was a pause. On the feed, I could see one of Velan's junior officers querying something at console. Then a second officer. Then a quiet exchange between them that the commander interrupted by stepping forward. You are a pre-war survey tender, he said. He didn't say it like a question. He said it the way you might identify a piece of furniture someone had dragged in from a field. Your vessel class was retired from active Survey Authority service before the Reach Accords were signed. She was recommissioned, Deshira said, under the Heritage Charter. Another pause. I watched Velan's expression cycle through something that was not quite amusement and not quite contempt, but lived between them comfortably. He said something to his officers that our translator clipped to partial. The Hierarchate dialect had a regular compression in fast speech, but the tone came through well enough. Behind him, I saw 2 of the junior officers exchange a look. The kind of look people exchange when they're trying not to laugh in a professional setting. We received a boarding order and complied. They sent 4 inspectors. They arrived in the Drift's cargo lock with the systematic thoroughness of people who expected to find violations and intended to enjoy cataloging them. The lead inspector, a junior officer named something my translator rendered as Veth Orlin, walked our corridors with a scanning rod and a data tablet and the brisk efficiency of someone who had done this before and found it rewarding. He was not wrong to be thorough. The Drift had quirks. The port drive coupling vibrated during acceleration in a way that sounded alarming but was, per every calibration record I had on file, within tolerance. The water reclamation unit in the crew quarters ran 3 degrees warmer than spec and had for 9 years. The secondary antenna array was technically 2 arrays sharing a mounting bracket, which required a single-line notation on our equipment manifest. Veth Orlin found all of these things and noted them with visible satisfaction. I followed him through the ship because my job requires it with my own tablet. He noted the drive coupling. I noted that its vibration amplitude fell within the tolerance band defined by Survey Authority Technical Standard 7-114, Revision 6. He noted the water reclamation temperature deviation. I noted the exemption filed under long-duration charter operations, which allows a 3 to 5 degree variance on non-potable processing circuits, dated and countersigned by the authority's Engineering Review Board. He noted the antenna array configuration. I noted that a dual-array composite mount was a listed option in the Vessel Modification Registry and had been formally approved when the drift was recommissioned, with the relevant notation already present on our manifest, line 47. He reviewed these responses for a while without saying anything. Then he said the array documentation would require secondary verification. Of course, I said. I can relay the secondary verification request to the Concord filing office for you. I'll need your inspector's credential number for the filing header. He gave it to me. It was a standard hierarchate enforcement credential, exactly as I had expected. I filed the secondary verification request. I also filed, while I had the relay connection open, the completed survey assessment for the Velsorith Reach, Section 4, which was the section covering the hierarchate garrison installation we were currently docked against. The assessment had been running since we entered the Reach 11 days prior. Passive sensor arrays, which the drift had run continuously and which were entirely lawful under the Treaty of Assessed Presence, had accumulated range data, mass profile data, weapons array configuration data, construction timeline estimates derived from material weathering scans, and garrison population estimates derived from heat signature sampling. All of it was within the parameters of a standard sector assessment. All of it had been logged, time-stamped, and formatted to Concord evidentiary standard throughout. The filing took me 4 minutes. The relay confirmed receipt with the standard automated acknowledgement. I looked up from my tablet. Veth Oralin was still reviewing the antenna documentation on his screen. Your secondary verification request is filed, I told him. The response time is 7 to 10 working days. I paused. The drift sector assessment has also been submitted. The garrison installation here is covered under Section 4. Commander Velan will receive the assessment notice through the standard Concord channel. Veth Oralin stopped reading. He looked at me. He had the smooth, slightly luminous complexion common to the officer caste, and it was good at communicating fine gradations of expression. The one it was communicating now was not one I had a clean word for. It was the expression of someone who has just understood something and would very much prefer that they hadn't. The assessment, he said slowly, covers the installation. The installation, the weapons array, the ancillary construction in grid sectors 3 through 7, and the garrison population, I said. It's a comprehensive assessment. That's standard for the Reach designation. I glanced at my tablet. The commander has 48 hours to review the findings before they are logged to the permanent treaty record. If there are any administrative responses he'd like to include, they need to be submitted through the same relay. Veth Oralin set down his scanning rod. He looked at the rod. He looked at his data tablet. He looked at the notation fields he had been filling in for the past 2 hours: drive coupling vibration, water temperature, antenna mounting configuration, and I watched him work through the arithmetic of the situation in real time. The arithmetic was not complicated, but I gave him a moment. The hierarchate had been establishing presence in the Velsorith Reach for the better part of 2 years. The Reach was contested under the Concord framework, which meant that sovereign claim required, among other things, a completed assessment filed by an authority-certified survey vessel. They had, apparently, assumed that keeping survey vessels out of the sector was sufficient. They had not accounted for the Heritage Charter, which allowed older vessels to operate under older corridor classifications. The pre-war survey lanes that the Reach's current restricted zone designation didn't technically cover, because they predated it. They had seen an antique ship. They had boarded it to cite the antenna mount. They had handed us the inspector's credential number. Veth Oralin picked up his scanning rod, tucked it under his arm, and said, in a voice that had gone carefully neutral, that he would need to consult with Commander Velan. Of course, I said. The assessment notice will be in his relay queue now, if he'd like to get ahead of it. He nodded once. He and his team left the way they came. Their shuttle undocked with less ceremony than it had arrived with. Deshira appeared at my shoulder a few minutes later, holding 2 cups of coffee from the galley dispenser. She handed me one. It was the Drift's coffee, which was made from a 14-year-old concentrate and tasted exactly like that. but it was hot. How long, she said, before his superiors calm him? The assessment notice hits the relay in about 6 minutes, I said. So, 7. She nodded. We drank our coffee. The drift's port drive coupling hummed quietly beneath us, comfortably within tolerance, same as always. Nobody asked what we were doing there again.